Now, I go through this at a fair old lick, so I apologise in advance. We're actually 10 years old, and this magazine is just out this week, and it celebrates our 10th year. Cancer Active, I just want to say a couple of things up front. We are truly independent. We raise all our own money. We have absolutely no vested interest. We don't take money from large corporations of any sort. So as a result, we call it as we see it, and we call it as we see it from research. So I spend a lot of my time doing research. So in my spare time, sad that I am, I get something like 100 different sources come across my desk. And I'm looking for things all the time that can provide the latest information to you. I have an e-news and so on. We see ourselves as the people's champion. Why do we see that? Well, because if cancer research loosely is about drugs, and it is because we talked to the chairman of the chief executive of cancer research a few years ago and I interviewed him, and his aim was to get more people on drug trials than any other country in the world. And if Macmillan is about support, they sadly can't get away from their nurses, and I'm not criticising them for that at all. We're about empowerment. When Catherine had her cancer, she was at Bristol University. When Catherine had her cancer, she had a brain tumour, and she was given 6 months to live. And it was very, very simple. We went looking for alternatives because the drugs didn't work. And there is so much information out there. And we decided that if people don't know about it, then they're not so much dying of cancer, they're dying of ignorance. And that is terrible. So our job for the last 10 years was to bring this information to people and to empower them so they can make more personal choices, more informed, more personal choices. So that's what we do. Now, cancer over the last 10 years. I'm sorry, I've got to sort of start here. It seems like I'm criticising. I'm not intending to criticise at all. This is from Our Achievements, which is on the Cancer Research UK site. And it says, over the last 10 years, our achievements, 5-year survival has risen to 50%, 10-year survival has risen to 42%, all common cancers have higher 10-year survival rates, testicular melanoma, breast is over 70%, up from 46%, and this is due to earlier diagnosis and better drugs. Now, all I can say is I'm really glad they've taken the word only out, because I chastised them 2 years ago in an editorial for saying it was only due to better diagnosis and better drugs. One of my things, I'm not saying anybody's wrong or lying or anything like that. They do a great job, cancer research. I call it the mythology of cancer. And this is a quote from President Kennedy, who said, "The great enemy of the truth is very often not the lie. It's deliberate, contrived, dishonest, a lie, but the myth, which is persistent, persuasive, and unrealistic." So let's have a little look, shall we? Better and earlier diagnosis. Now, those of you who know me and know Cancer Active know that I've been going on about mammograms for 8 years, 9 years, just producing the research all the time. There are 50,000 diagnoses of breast cancer a year. It depends which research you want to see. It's 31, 40%, 50% misdiagnosis, 11,000 deaths a year, whatever. There's a big debate about how many lives are saved. But the important point for me on mammograms is twofold. One, that the diagnosis comes when the tumour is large enough to see it, which is the 20 division level, and you're dead at 40. So it's halfway through the life cycle of the cancer. So it's not early diagnosis. And secondly, my criticism really of mammograms for 8, 9 years has been, if we weren't going down this blind alley, we would be investing in other things which would be much simpler. And it's the same with the PSA test. I won't bore you, but this is American research which we published this year. For every one person whose life is saved, 100 are needlessly treated. My concern is the vested interest, money spent on machines, embarrassment factor, whatever, has inhibited the development of simple blood tests. You probably read in Cancer Active, there's a boy in America, he's 15-year-old in a biology class, and he came up with a test for pancreatic cancer that actually cost 3 cents. there's Nottingham and Kansas have got together and they've developed a lung cancer test. There's a new early breast cancer test we've published in this magazine. What's really interesting is it's all independently funded. And there's actually now talk, I've covered it just recently in my e-news, there's talk now from the NHS about diverting the funding away from mammograms. I mean, all I can say is it's 8 years, 10 years too late, guys. Better drugs. Let's talk about better drugs. This is a really interesting one, because we get awfully confused at Cancer Active sometimes, because we ask honest questions and people don't give us honest answers. So we rang Cancer Research and we said, could you please tell us, innocent questions, what drugs are you particularly proud of that you've launched in the last 10 years? And what drugs have been launched in the last 10 years that you think are pretty good? And they said, go to this particular page and you'll find them. And when we went to the page, I went to the page, the last drug that they had on the page that they claimed was temozolomide, which was 1982. So we went back and said, we're making a mistake here. What's going on? And you know, what about other new drugs? And they sent us to another page. And that didn't really have anything on it either, because I went through it. Drugs in the last 10 years, I could talk about temozolomide, Avastin, Herceptin, abiraterone's the first prostate cancer drug for 40 years. So are the drugs actually making this change, this benefit to people and longer survival? Well, you might have seen in Cancer, in Icon, last time, Carol Sikora was looking at the emergence of 60 biologics under development. He led a team of 37 professors and experts, and they looked at 8 new biologics. I won't read them out. They concluded that they were expensive. They went up to £24,000 a month, and the average survival gain, one of them was 7 months, and all the others were 2, 3, or 4 months. Now, I'm not criticising the drugs. I'm just saying, do you think this justifies someone saying, these growth rates in survival are only due to earlier diagnosis and better drugs? That's all I'm asking. So I think it's a bit of a persistent myth. So the truth is, today, that virtually everybody is offered drugs. Who's offered drugs, which is about 70% of people with cancer, are still offered some sort of old-fashioned chemotherapy. Let's call it that. Now, what about chemotherapy? Well, the first point to make is that according to the Department of Oncology in North Sydney, so this is serious oncologists, they did a research study and showed that chemotherapy made a minor contribution to 5 years survival. 2.3% in Australia, 2.1% in America. Now, you might think that's across the 320,000 people who get cancer in Britain, that's a significant figure. It's about 4,000 people a year. This year, Duke's came out with a big report on cancer and drugs, and they said patients with cancer are largely being misled into believing that the drug they are being offered is somehow going to cure them. That was the conclusion of Duke's in America. Let's carry on. We covered it this year. Chemotherapy can cause cancer to return. Fred Hutchinson Cancer Centre. Now, Cancer Research obviously dived in straight away and said, we've always known cancers can come back. That's not what they said. They said it can cause cancer to return because we found out that chemotherapy can hit healthy cells, make them produce a protein called WNT16B. This actually is taken up by the cancer cells and they use it to grow, come back and protect themselves from the chemo next round. Next point, no current drugs can kill cancer stem cells. Well, what are cancer stem cells? Again, I've done a big survey of all this. Cancer stem cells could possibly be at the heart of all tumours. And research, there were 3 big studies in the middle of last year. They've been isolated by 2 hospitals in London. In the past, we've tried to get rid of the entire stew of cancer cells, but shrinking a tumour by 50% is irrelevant. No current drugs tackle cancer stem cells, but at least we know now what we're going to go after. And this was done by, this was a quote from Dr. Louis Parada, one of the people who actually proved they exist last summer. So I'm merely pointing out there are 4 different pieces of research there that we say chemotherapy probably does do a bit of a job, but not to the point where chemotherapy is, and new drugs are the be-all and end-all of these results. But now let's go away from the problem, because I'm sort of an ad man in all this. Here's the problem, now let's get to the solution. This is also 2012 research. This is from the National Cancer Institute in America, so the big boys. And they say, and this is a doctor in their own laboratories, I'll come to her in a minute, bioactive food components have the capacity to suppress cancer stem cells and prevent them from self-renewal. And she went on to say that bad foods could actually cause the cancer to regrow, and good foods could actually stop it regrowing. It's all about feedback molecules. And her conclusions, this is Dr. Young S. Kim, was that the natural compounds that could actually stop the regrowth of cancer stem cells were sulforaphanes, curcumin, piperine, black pepper, theanine and choline, B vitamins, plus vitamins A and D, genistein, red clover, soy, and EGCG from green tea. And she said, I'm sure this caused alarm bells, all may be taken as supplements. So, at this point, as I say, I'm not trying to be overly critical, I'm just trying to give you what the research says. Do you believe that improved survival, those figures you saw earlier on, in the cancer research statement, were due to better earlier diagnosis and better drugs? Exclusively. No, of course not. I believe it's due to self-empowerment. And I think that's been the big trend that's happened in the last 20 years in Britain, self-empowerment. What do I mean? We're all now more aware of cancer. We have easy internet access to information. We now have complementary cancer centres, for example, Penny Bron, Maggie's Haven, and so on. We now use complementary therapists who are more aware. We can easily access cancer centres abroad, so you can actually go and check things out for yourself. Lots of people do. We have Cancer Active and Icon books and magazines. Now, we are actually in 640 plus hospitals, cancer centres and libraries in Britain. 3/4 of Icon readers use 3 or more complementary therapies. 2/3 of Icon readers take more than 3 supplements. 90% have changed their diet. 25% use therapies that reduce stress. Does this all count for nothing? Really? Now, we all know that diet's important. An apple a day keeps the doctor away, especially if well aimed. Mark Twain. The American Cancer Society last year really pulled out all the stops, because I'm glad to say they just agreed with what I've been doing for the last 6-10 years. They said in a report that there's been an explosion, their word, in research into complementary therapies since 2006. And there's overwhelming evidence that diet, exercise, and weight control improve survival times and keep patients cancer-free. They stop it coming back. Really important conclusion. And this has been endorsed by the National Cancer Institute in America. You've probably hardly seen it unless you read Cancer Active and the magazine. It's a really important finding. Another mythology of cancer, we got a lady sent a letter to us, email, followed up by a couple of weeks afterwards, about 6 years ago. And then she said, I went to have my chemotherapy, and they gave me a booklet. And on every page, there's a picture of a cheeseburger and a milkshake and a sticky donut. And it says in there to drink milky, sugary tea and have biscuits and cakes. When Catherine was in hospital after a brain operation, they gave her Ribena and ice cream, right? And it was in the Times about 1.5 years ago. Top doctor was saying 40% of patients need to be on this sort of diet if they're on chemotherapy. We got to the bottom of it. Nutritionists are very hard work. Sorry, dietitians, I should say, actually. They made a big thing. Royal Marsden wrote back to me and said, we're not nutritionists. You just write books and take money. Dietitians only see 7% of patients, and those are the people in trouble. They don't have any more time to do it than that. So I feel sorry for them a bit. And why? It's called cachexia. Now, cachexia is when basically you lose so much weight from taking the drug, you die. And we can't possibly have 7% of people dying from drugs, can we? But, again, if you read Icon and Cancer Active, this year we've been telling you that US hospitals, MD Anderson, Memorial Sloan Kettering, have been talking about using a nutritious diet if you're on chemotherapy. Why? There are 6 studies in the last 3 years that glucose feeds cancer cells, especially if you've got a brain tumour. Right? Especially if you've got a brain tumour. Cancer is also desperate for a growth hormone. If you have breast cancer, your breast cancer will go and attack your bones. The reason is the bones strengthen, they produce growth hormone to fight off the cancer. The cancer says thank you very much and uses it to actually get blood supplies and grow. Now, there's also research this year that show you don't actually have to get cachexia. There are natural compounds like fish oils which can improve your appetite, improve your eating habits, and actually prevent cachexia. And there's a big research study from America on that. And would you believe there's actually a study, they're going to do clinical trials, just come out, which says that especially for radiotherapy and probably for chemotherapy, calorie restriction is the best diet. And that is pretty important if that happens to be true. Next area. Your cancer, I've been saying this for 10 years, your cancer is as individual as you are. That lady's breast cancer is not the same as that lady's breast cancer, yet you historically have been treated the same way. Now, at least the whole of the NHS is moving that way now. We're moving away from one size fits all. Cancer research have said that. 2 pieces of research in the last 12 months, 1,240 cases of DCIS were examined histologically, and no 2 were the same. Cancer research themselves have found that there's 10 different clusters of breast cancer, but they only have treatments for 2. They have treatments, the tamoxifen and aromatase therapy route, and they have treatments on the Herceptin route, targeted therapy. But diet is important in treating cancer. I'll go through it rapidly. Carotenoids and selenium can prevent breast cancer returning, Harvard. Indole 3-carbinol controls rapid cell division in breast cancer. An effective treatment for triple-negative breast cancer, Indole 3-carbinol and DIM. Right? 2 studies in the last couple of months with vitamin D, and they're going for clinical trials now on triple-negative breast cancer. Eating blueberries can inhibit breast cancer tumour growth. Red grape polyphenols, resveratrol, quercetin, quercetin can inhibit the progression of breast cancer. I'm not talking alternative, I'm talking complementary. There's too much information from quality research centres to ignore, whether it's on vitamin D, on curcumin, fish oils, and so on. There's stacks of it now. Right, just go to our website, you'll see curcumin, there's pages of it. The mythology of cancer. But, the fact is, do any of the following have clinical trials to support them? Now, I'm not having a hissy fit or anything here. Brachytherapy. It's now being used for women in America with breast cancer. There is not a clinical trial behind it for breast cancer. And doctors are actually saying there isn't. What is it? It's men have it at the moment with prostate cancer. You put little seeds all the way around the tumour and kill the tumour. And it, laughably, I won't tell you which cancer, you can get cancer charity. They say it's perfectly safe. Oh, but by the way, don't sit children on your lap. Cyberknife, this new wondrous, Royal Marsden have just got one of these machines, and what it does is it attacks your tumour in your brain, but comes at you from 6 different points, so you don't put so much radiation through all the different points. And they say it's safer. Well, how do you know? Where's the clinical trials, guys? 685 generic drugs are on the market in America, and the FDA admit they only check 3%, and they've never even been to the factories because most of them come from China. Right? Under 12s and chemotherapy. Herbalists were told you mustn't recommend echinacea for the under 12s. The same week, it was found that actually under 12s having chemotherapy, there's virtually no clinical trials on it whatsoever. And the doctor, the head oncologist said, well, we've used it for so long, we know what we're doing. Yeah, but when that argument was used for herbalists, they were told they didn't know what they were doing. And then we get virotherapy, which has been used for 10 or 12 years, dendritic therapy, cell therapy, It's being used in hospitals right now in America. Here's Amy's story. Amy's story is particularly pertinent to me because she got her breast tumour at the same time, her brain tumour at the same time Catherine did. She was an air hostess, she got a grade 4 brain tumour. Fortunately for her, she went to Dr. Henry Friedman, who's at Duke's. Funnily enough, I rang him up with Catherine, and he answered me straight away, although who was I 10 years ago? Who am I today? And Dr. Henry Friedman gave her dendritic cell therapy 10 years ago. Still not had clinical trials behind it today. So I'm not knocking these things. I'm just saying, oranges and apples, guys. He says it's naive to think that treating someone with a single drug could cure a cancer, especially a brain cancer. And as you know, if you read my works, I always say there is no single thing that cures cancer. Not vitamin D, not a drug, not B17 or any of that stuff. There's not one single thing that does it. You have to build a program. This was her program. She put this around the outside of her dendritic cell therapy. Now, just make sure, I'm going to test you afterwards on each one of these. She took a lot. The interesting thing was that our writer asked me what research said might help someone with a brain tumour, and I wrote an article, and I'd missed 3 out. Amy, of course, is alive, 12 years on. She's now had 2 children. Friedman encouraged her, as long as it doesn't do harm. Wouldn't it be lovely to have some oncologist who encouraged you, as long as it doesn't do harm? And he calls it Enlightened Medicine. Enlightened Medicine in America, 37% of cancer hospitals treat mind, body and soul. It's in their mission statement. UCLA now has courses for integrated medicine and integrated doctors. And I mean, Robin talked about block centre. Frankly, most towns, most cities have got several integrated centres. We haven't got them because if you do 7 years hard work as a doctor and then you want to launch an integrated practice, you can't even advertise it in Yellow Pages. Don't get me started on the 1939 Act. It's very, very controversial. All I'm going to say is, you saw what Amy took. Does all that count for nothing? What's going on as well is there is this move away from trying to cure you. Now, I know you get press releases, and that well-known medical journal, the Daily Mail, talks about curing cancer almost every day. It does, yes, it does. But if you watch Bloomberg, as I do, and looked at some of these companies and CEOs talking about what they're doing, and you read MD Anderson's report on what they're trying to do with drugs, they are not talking about cure anymore. They're talking about cancer management. They're talking about turning cancer from into a chronic but manageable disease like diabetes with sequential treatment. What this means is we'll give you drug A for 5 years, and then we'll give you drug B for 3 years, by which time we've probably come up with drug C, and we'll give you that for another three years. And if you're getting cancer at the age of 65, we're going to get you to 77, so job done. And it's the mythology of cancer. It's an old person disease. 85% of cancers come after the age of 65. The research says it is not going to be like this in 20 years' time. The research says that prostate cancer has multiplied 6-fold in the 40 age group. There's been an explosion in throat, mouth, esophageal cancers. Breast cancers, 40% of them are now in the under 60s. If you get it when you're 35, how does keeping you alive, managing you for another 7, 11 years help? Right? Young people's cancers have tripled in the last 25 years. We rang cancer research when Catherine had a cancer, and they told me that we were writing an article for the magazine on children's cancer, and they told me I shouldn't worry about children's cancers because there weren't very many of them, and anyway they could cure them all. I quote you verbatim. I said, tell my daughter, the mythology of cancer, I'd want to be cured. I don't want to have my cancer managed. I want to actually try for a cure. New drugs, I'm not saying they don't work at all. New drugs can play a role in this, but please understand that new drugs like Herceptin, they tackle one genetic issue, and they replace a protein or something you've lost, or try and get that protein back, for example. If you have prostate cancer, 5,900 genes go wrong. So you're not actually going to cure you, you're actually going to keep you alive for a bit longer, and then we'll find another drug. You must build a thorough program around this orthodox medicine because you owe it to yourself. Now, we're talking about integrated cancer treatment programs, and I have promised to go back to doing personal prescriptions. I look at the research under 4 headings. When I do a personal prescription, all I do is tell you what the research says, and what you do with it is your business, right? Because I think I'm trying to inform you and empower you. I look at research under 4 headings. Number 1, polishing orthodox treatments. Number 2, uncoupling the possible causes and drivers. Number 3, tackling the various steps of cancer. And number 4, reversal. Actually returning your body to health. And you'll see in those 4 headings, the drugs and the orthodox medicine work in area 3, and that's about it. At the end of the day, who cures your cancer? You do. Your body kicks it out. Whatever help you get from outside, your body kicks it out. Polishing orthodox treatments. You know, I don't know why people are afraid of all this complementary and alternative stuff. Actually, most of the time, we're trying to tell people how to make the best of what they're doing now. The fact is that surgery does increase cancer spread. Not in every case, but it does sometimes. And there is clear research, 12 studies that show an antihistamine called Tagamet can actually, if you take it 3 days before and during the time, whatever, can limit your metastatic spread. Curcumin's another one. Or actually, making your body more alkaline. There's 3 universities in America who've looked at making your body more alkaline by using, dare I say it, sodium bicarbonate. Actually can stop metastatic spread, new metastatic spread, and they're doing clinical trials on it right now. Sorry, skeptics. How to improve radiotherapy. For example, there's research on astragalus, soy isoflavone, selenium, vitamin D, all improve radiotherapy. There's also research showing that the side effects will be reduced: probiotics, flaxseed oil, and hyperbaric oxygen therapy. How to improve drug therapies. Some vitamins improve the effectiveness of treatments. MD Anderson's got research on vitamin C, vitamin K, and drugs. Milk thistle and mistletoe. There's research on that saying actually it gets rid of some side effects and actually gets you fitter to fight. Fish oils, as I told you, reduce cachexia risk. And some foods actually conflict with drugs. So I had a lady from America who told me that her doctor had told her not to take supplements and vitamins and all that sort of thing because they're naughty, but had not told her that her favourite food, which was grapefruits, actually mucked up her drug. So she was taking grapefruit every day, and grapefruit affects Taxol, Herceptin, tamoxifen, and so on. I think that's quite important. It's all on the Taxol website, if you know where to look. Uncoupling the causes and drivers. This is the second area. We're always told 50% of cancers are your fault. You know, they're your own fault. You smoke too much, you eat too much, you drink too much, and so on. What about the 50% that aren't your fault? And here I won't go through it all. Let's just take a couple. Estrogen. You can, if you've got breast cancer, you will be told by your doctor whether you're estrogen positive or not. But estrogen drives loads of cancers: prostate cancer, endometrial cancer, colorectal cancer, stomach cancer, brain tumours. Because estrogen doesn't just poison cells, estrogen can keep stem cells in the rapidly dividing state rather than allowing them to convert into new brain cells or new stomach cells. And that's the background to it. So estrogen's terribly important, but you can help yourself. You can denature estradiol to weaker estrone by using indole 3-carbinol, eating lots of broccoli, as Robert Thomas found. You can block the receptor sites on cells, and that's using broccoli again, indole 3-carbinol, DIM, which is the metabolite, phytoestrogens, greens, pulses, red clover. Reducing your weight to normal will stop the source of some of the estrogen because fat is a precursor to estrogen. Cutting pesticides, toxic in-home products. I mean, the World Health Organization's just done a big study, and they've said we've got to get BPA and phthalates and whatever out of our daily lives. Everybody's ignored it. If it had been about measles, everybody would be jumping up and down trying to give injections on measles, wouldn't they? But not if it's about this. It just gets forgotten. EMFs. EMFs put your melatonin level down. Poor sleep puts your melatonin level down. Melatonin balances your estrogen and it actually helps you reduce your estrogen levels if they're high in the body. Flaxseed, medicinal mushrooms, carotenoids, polyphenols, whatever, they reduce your estrogen. So there's lots of things you can do. It's all in the research. Stress. I don't understand this. For 10 years, I've felt that stress is a cause and a driver of cancer. Cancer Research UK came out with a proper piece of research the other week saying there's no link between day-to-day stress and cancer. In 2003, Time magazine did a 42-page supplement which was Your Mind Can Make You Sick, Your Mind Can Heal You. And they talked to lots of professors in America about all this. And it went right through everything from your brain, right through to the cell. And they said, we've only got to find out the last step, how it affects the cell. We've cracked it. I'll show you in a minute. They should have asked a Brit. We already knew. Now, depression is known to increase cancer risk. If people who've got depression, 30% more likely to get cancer, they've also got less oxygen in their blood. Depression causes less oxygen causes depression. It's a vicious circle. But I'm really talking about the death of a loved one. children's problems, relationship, my children, my daughter, she can't pay her mortgage. It's that sort of stress. It's the ongoing difficult stress. And the fact is that stress hormones like cortisol increase after you get cancer. So you've got to tackle this. Cancer patients are often the nicest people. The problem is they try to please everybody. So they're rushing around trying to please everybody. Two things happen. One, they actually don't look after themselves properly. And secondly, you can't please Great Aunt Maud. She doesn't want to be pleased. And so you end up feeling unhappy, guilty, because you can't please everybody, and you're frustrated, and so on. These bring other feelings into you. The other thing they do is they get stuck in the wrong jobs. They don't like to complain. They don't like to cause trouble. So they take on the problems of others in the office, or they just end up working in the wrong job. And cancer patients typically suffer in silence. A lot of nodding in the room. They don't make time for themselves, so there's an emotional thing, but then there's a practical thing. They don't make time for themselves, they eat hurriedly, and they don't go to the gym and things like this. Now, stress as a cause driver. This is 2010 research. Stress, emotional, work-related, and others, I quote it verbatim, causes inflammation, which in turn stimulates two cancer-causing genes inside the cell. Hitherto, we thought it, but couldn't prove it. 1982, John Vane, a Brit, won a Nobel Prize and a knighthood for finding out about eicosanoids. Eicosanoids are hormones that you have in every cell of your body. There's about 130 of them. They last between 1 and 6 seconds. And some are good, some are bad. Prostaglandins. Some are good in small doses, bad in big doses. And they all hinges around an enzyme called COX-2, which actually helps make more of the bad guys. And COX-2 is stimulated by insulin, cortisol, and steroids. I can't do anything about the steroids, but it's one of the first things they give you if you get cancer when you go to the hospital. Steroids. I can do something about insulin. Lots of people in Britain increasingly eat 1 or 2 big meals a day. Don't. Graze. Eat 6 small meals a day. You will keep your, low GI foods, you will keep your insulin levels balanced. But Seattle Medical School, they've actually shown, it's time to get the lycra out, guys. They've shown that having your first ever yoga class actually cuts your cortisol level. They took 10,000 people and sent half of them home, which is what the doctor normally says, and their cortisol levels went down 5%. The other half were sent off to do their first yoga class. Their cortisol levels went down 25%, and after a week they were down 40%. You can reduce COX-2 action with aspirins, fish oils, curcumin, garlic, ginger, resveratrol. Aspirin comes up time and time again. Vane, that was what his research was all about. The Mayo Clinic have done loads of it. And now this year, last year we covered it, Oxford University and the Radcliffe Centre, they've shown that taking a 75 milligram tablet, that's all, increases prevention, cuts metastasis by half, and improves survival time. The death rate's cut by more than a third if you take a small aspirin every night. Now, it's quite important to know, isn't it? And they actually called on NICE to include aspirin in standard cancer treatment. Stress has also been shown to shorten your telomeres. What are telomeres? If you imagine your DNA as a bootlace, at the two ends of the bootlace you've got plastic. That's holding your bootlace together. Telomeres hold your DNA together. And what happens is, when you're young, they're long, and as you get older, they get short. And when you're ill, they get shorter, and when you get cancer and you're particularly stressed, they get very short. But UCLA showed that patients undergoing stress management courses aided by complementary therapies like yoga and fish oils had telomere lengthening. Telomeres go back the other way. Pretty important. Wow. How many people took fish oils this morning? Right, tomorrow morning, all of you take fish oils. Anyway, and they said those people who did stress management courses survived significantly longer. So if stress has got nothing to do with cancer, how come they survive longer? So there it is. There's 5 things. Even transcendental meditation, they showed that on top of people who have diet, who actually can survive longer, transcendental meditation, so sitting on the floor with the Beatles music in the background, that actually can make you survive 48% longer. Does all this count for nothing? 3, tackling the steps of cancer. In my Rainbow Diet book, Am I allowed to say that's Cancer Act, isn't it? In my Rainbow Diet book, which we haven't bought today to sell, otherwise that would be breaking the Cancer Act, I took about 17 steps of cancer. I sent out an e-news about a year ago. John Boyk of the MD Anderson Centre wrote back to me straight away saying, "You're absolutely right, Chris, but there are 20 steps." And he wrote a book called Natural Compounds in Cancer Therapy in 2000, I think it was, looked at all the research on foods then. And the point is, modern medicine is moving this way. It's moving to tackling each of the steps. You know, it's moving to, boosting your immune system and actually stopping you getting blood supplies to a tumour and so on. The point is they can't throw 20 drugs at you. You die. But you can throw 20 lots of food at you for the 20 steps. That's the good news, that food actually can do all this. Tackling the steps. We've done inflammation and irritation. I've told you what does that. Immune system. American research, massive study. The Vital study showed that grape seed extract was the best one to take. They didn't have pine bark extract in there. Herbs, cat's claw, echinacea, curcumin. Now, all those boost your white cells. And it's important to understand white cells because you've got 20, 30, 40 different types of white cell, not just one, although you get measured for your white cell count. It's not enough just to boost the number of white cells. They need to be able to see the rogue cells. Now, astragalus helps them see. It's a herb that helps them see the bad guys. And polysaccharides help communication between cells. There are 4 Nobel Prizes in the last 15 years about polysaccharides helping communication of the immune system with the bad guys. Even that's not enough. So we boosted the immune system. Hopefully we've got all the different types of white cells going, and then we've got them recognizing the bad guys. But it's been shown that's not enough. You need to activate the T cells, which come rushing out of your lymph glands, and go after the rogue guys. And the first thing they do is they look for a vitamin D molecule. And people don't quite understand it because, or none of the research seems to say that they understand it, but vitamin K plays a role. I can then talk to you about reducing metastasis, reducing tumour growth, killing cancer cells. It's all in the books. It's all in the magazines. That's area 3. There's loads you can do to tackle each step. But here, this is the 4th area. It's probably the most controversial area, as if I wasn't controversial at all in this speech. Reversal, healing your mind and your body. It's the most ignored area of modern medicine, which is, once I've given you the treatment, how can I get you back to health? How can I restore the healthy you? Yes, you've got to heal your mind, and you've got to take time for yourself. You can eat, as I showed you, to restore your mind. Harvard has done the research. You can take natural compounds to boost the healing in your body, as National Cancer Institute showed. You can build a body of support around you and not criticism. I interviewed Contreras at the Oasis of Hope, Mexico, a few years ago, and he told me a lovely story. He said, we had a lady come in, she had breast cancer, and he likes to interview everybody himself. So he interviews this lady, and he invites them to bring someone with him. And she's got her husband. So he starts the interview 9 o'clock on the Monday morning, and she's talking to her. And as he gets going, after about 20 minutes, he realizes that he asks her the question, the husband answers. So after 20 minutes, they threw the husband out. He carried on talking to her. Then they sent the husband home. And for 8 weeks, all she had was counselling for an hour in the morning and an hour at 5 o'clock in the evening. Why? And he said, she just had to get all this stuff off her chest. She had all these problems, and she wasn't allowed to say anything. Now, when I say build a body of support around you, I'm not advocating divorce or anything like that. But, surround yourself with positive people. Don't put, people often say to us, the moment I got cancer, I realised what was important in life and what wasn't. Well, before you get cancer, realise what's important in life. Don't put up with the moaners and the negative people. When you get all your helpers together, don't have negative people. Build your personal energy. Avoid users, people who take energy. Practice yoga or transcendental meditation. Listen to the Beatles. Watch old movies that are funny, that you like. People forget that sort of thing. Humour, believe it or not, laughing increases your immune system. There's research on it. Take daily exercise, heart, lung circulation. We know about weight control, but it moves the lymph. It gets the toxins away from your cells. It burns glucose, which is very, very important. It reduces fat stores and so on. So exercise, light daily exercise is really important. Men who walked at least 90 minutes per week at a normal to brisk pace were 46% less likely to die. Men who undertook vigorous exercise, like tennis or jogging or bike riding, for at least 3 hours a week had a 49% lower risk than them of dying. I mean, this is pretty important research. We cover it all the time. But here's the controversial area, but not to Americans. I'm standing in the queue in Dubai, and I've got a doctor behind me. We're waiting for an hour, and he does rheumatoid arthritis. He starts telling me all about this, but I know, because I can prove it. It's been in my books for 5 years. It's called the microbiome, which basically says you're not an organism of 7 trillion cells and 25,000 genes. You're a superorganism of 100 trillion cells, 100,000 genes. There's a stack of research on this, right? 80 clinical trials and 5,000 research studies. The bacteria that live with you are essential to your good health. And right now, in America, they are very worried about this because they know that the treatments they use actually muck up your bacteria, good guys in your stomach. When it becomes ill, so do you. And they know that drugs, antibiotics, chlorine, salt, whatever, make it iller. And they know that sugar feeds its enemies. And they know that you have a symbiotic relationship with these bacteria. They're really important to you. They direct your immune system. Children brought up on farms who have animals around them actually sneezed and mum thought it was a cold. It wasn't. It was them getting a new bacteria and their body having an allergic reaction to that bacterium. And that allergic reaction boosts your immune system for life in some cases, or until you get hold of some chlorine or some drug or whatever. So it doesn't just direct your immune system, it powers your immune memory. It helps excrete toxic waste. The bacteria bind with greens and things like that to get it out of your body. It provides essential nourishment. You can only make certain B vitamins and vitamin K and things like that if you have the right bacteria in your gut. And most importantly, some of the bacteria provide cancer-killing sodium butyrate. Here's a little story. Clostridium difficile, MSRA, 12,000 deaths a year in USA hospitals. They're using stools as enemas from healthy people, and people get better almost overnight because the bacteria in their guts actually come back to normal health. If they get ill, you get ill. So ignore the microbiome at your peril. And as I say, reversal, a healthy UU, cut glucose or high fructose corn syrup, cut cow's dairy because it's growth hormone, cut the refined salt, the alcohol, eat a rainbow diet, lots of colours. I could have given you a different speech today was how all the different colours actually protect and correct you. Take light daily exercise, control your weight, cut the stress out of your life. That's the list. Thank you.